Thank you very much for staying with us. Well, let's talk about human rights, especially in the wake of Human Rights Day, which was celebrated globally on December the 10th. That's only a few days ago. Human rights in Nigeria are protected under the 1999 Constitution as amended, which guarantees fundamental rights such as rights to life, dignity, personal liberty, fair hearing, and others. But despite these protections, Nigeria still faces significant human rights challenges. The National Human Rights Commission plays a crucial role in promoting and protecting human rights in Nigeria. Also, the United Nations declared December the 10th annually as the International Human Rights Day, mainly to highlight the enforcement of these rights. Now, let's speak with lawyer and rights activist Joke Aladesomi, who is here with us in the studio. She's also here in her capacity as the Executive Director of Center for Legal Support and Inmate Rehabilitation. It's good to have you again with us.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
We will narrow our conversation. Yes, it's Human Rights Day. And advocates as yourself say it shouldn't just be a December 10 affair,
right?
But you know, every day. But we'll narrow our conversation now to where we are, especially when we look at justice-impacted individuals. So let's have you break down that concept for us and how you would rate Nigeria right now.
Right. Thank you very much. And indeed, the world just celebrated International Human Rights Day, which is, a day to emphasize on the rights of every human being, regardless of your circumstances, regardless of your status. And in my case, or I would say as an organization, we're very particular about justice-impacted persons, that is incarcerated people, right, and people who must have been in conflict with the law. And I would tell you that as a nation, we are still far behind in terms of regarding their rights. As a matter of fact, there's a misconception, actually, that, if you're in conflict with the law and you're in prison, you're more or less like, you do not have rights. Right? Even though no one will tell you do not have rights, but that's the attitude. Let's even take a look at what the statistics is saying. If the statistic is showing that over 68% of those who are in prison are awaiting trial, that's already a significant breach of right there. Because what that simply means is that the right to fair hearing, it's presently been infringed on. They do not have, you will find that there are a lot of accused persons who are in court study for more than even 5 years, and they are still awaiting trial. But the rights also expect that their matter would be heard within time and without any unusual delay. But when you have somebody standing trial or not even going ahead at all, but being remanded in custody for 5, 6, 2 years, it's already a breach of your rights. And a day like this for us is to emphasize that even though justice-impacted persons are being locked up, the only right that is being taken away from them is a right to freedom. They have the right to every other right that is being provided for in the 1999 Constitution. They have the right to dignity. They have the right to fair hearing. They have the right, every single bit of that right, they are entitled to it. And that's like what we're using this opportunity to say, do not forget in our emphasis, in our advocacy for human rights, we cannot forget those who have been impacted by the justice system.
The figures are alarming.
Highly alarming.
When you look at from the 9th of December 2024, we have a total number of about 54,000 plus who are still awaiting trial in Nigeria.
Right.
So who is to be blamed in all of this? You just made mention that these numbers are alarming.
Right.
So who is to be blamed for this?
Well, I would say that I'm not sure there's any part of the stakeholders that are exempted from this blame, actually. Starting from the police down to the courts. Maybe I wouldn't even say the prison, because the prison do not have any. Their only responsibility is to hold them. They can't release them if the court doesn't give them the order to. Well, maybe except we're now looking at the condition of the prison, which is a different conversation. But every stakeholder has a role to play in reducing that number. For instance, a police officer arrests someone, a matter that should probably, be resolved, or maybe, even introducing restorative justice, or maybe the matter gets to the courts and non-custodial measures is being implemented, we wouldn't have those high numbers. we would not have those high numbers. You see people, everyone, well, I want to believe that, you know, a good percentage of Nigerians already know that contract or civil matters are not criminal matters, but you still have people arresting their debtors, you know, and taking them to the police station. And then, because you're much more privileged, because you're in a much more better place, you want to punish the other person, arrest the person, send the person to the prison. So there's a lot that still needs to be done, from the police down to the court. Why must a matter be in court for 3 years, for 5 years? We've had people we've represented that they were actually awaiting trial for a number of, you know, 5 years, 8 years awaiting trial. You know, all these things are attitude and actions that continue to impact the rights of people who have been impacted by the justice system. And I must say that even juveniles are not exempted. Young offenders are not exempted. You find a lot of them now being locked, even though the law will tell you every decision that has to do with a child, the interest of the child must be put first. But you still see them in custody. You still see them being locked up in juvenile centers, right? And all these things continue to impact the rights of justice-impacted persons, incarcerated, everyone that has to come in contact with the justice system.
But on this issue of the juveniles that you just mentioned, the idea of the juvenile centers is for them to be taken away, for them not to mix with adults who are in conflict of the law. So help us to, or would you like to clarify that, you know, bit that you just said? What recommendations are you proffering now? Let's begin with, you know, juveniles, you know, to ensure that their rights too are enforced.
Yes, so when it comes to juvenile, we need to understand one thing the child rights law and even the Act emphasizes on is when it has to do with a child, the interest of the child must be put first. You have to, first of all, so you're not thinking about, not big on the crime, but what is best for this child. Because there's a reason why the law refers to them as minors, by the way. So you're looking at it and what decision is going to be suitable for this child now. And even if you go deep into what the provision of the law says, incarceration or imprisonment should be like the last resort when it has to do with any child.
So what other options? So what preferable options is the law looking at?
You're also looking at looking at what exactly is the problem, looking at the root of the problem.
So it's a case-by-case approach.
Yes, it has to be a case-by-case approach when it comes to children. The psychosocial, do they need psychosocial support? What's their, what exposure do they have, you know, in their family setting? What the family setting is like? And that's why the Ministry of Youth and Social Development is there. So look at what's the state of this child in the family. Right now, we got to know in the course of our work that you have a high number of young offenders committing defilement. Come to think of, you can't even say it's defilement because even as a child they are being defiled, because even though they are the ones, you know, alleged to have perpetrated, you can't even call it rape, right? Because they are still young. Now we have
talking about a child allegedly carrying out sexual offense on another child.
On another child, right? Or
so you are saying it's a case of double...
It's a case of double minor, that you need to look beyond punishing them. In as much as it's fine, okay, they've committed an offense, yes, but there are more questions that needs to be asked beyond trying to punish the child for these offenses. Right? But now you're saying, oh, a 15-year-old child has just raped another child and you want to, you know, throw the child right under the box. Yes, the child has committed a crime, but beyond saying we want to punish this crime, we need to ask what are the causes? And these numbers are rising. Like when you go to the juvenile centers, you're seeing a lot of young offenders there for defilement. The question now should not be, how should we punish them? The question should not be, how long do we have to hold them back? The question should be, what is the problem?
So
what is happening in our society? We have to tackle it from the root. What is happening? You see a case of a child of 16-year-old raping a woman of 65, and you think it's just about punishing that child? You should go to the root of the question. We should not just, as a society, be so carried away by, let's punish a crime. A crime should be punished. I totally agree. That's why the laws are there. But there are steps that need to be taken. And when it comes to juveniles, when it comes to young offenders, we need to go beyond just punishing the crime.
Just a moment, can you please walk us through those processes, those steps that needs to be taken?
Well, when a child is being arrested, like I said, the Ministry of Youth and Social Development plays a very vital role when it has to do with a child who is in conflict with the law. And that's why the ministry is also in charge of overseeing the Special Correctional Center, you know, within the states. Okay. You know, when
their work is, we won't call it exactly legal. Would I be correct to say their work is more rehabilitation inclined?
Yes, okay. More rehabilitation inclined. But of course, they work. They have the legal department. They work with the Ministry of Justice and all those things. So once they are being arrested, and they're being held at the police station, and then they have to come, taken to court and all those things. Beyond them facing whatever crime they have been punished for, there are questions that needs to be asked. Do they need to look at what's the family system? Like, for instance, the case I made reference to about the 16-year-old child who was accused of raping a 65-year-old woman. They got to know that the boy has been on drugs because his parents are on drugs. So now the child did not just wake up one day to come and find himself committing these crimes. Something had gone wrong, at the background. Right. So while this child is trying to face whatever thing it is, it's also very important to try to look at what the problem is and how those problems can actually be well tackled.
For the adults, where lies the alternative dispute resolutions in all of this? Because if you are saying that there are too many people standing trial and they are not getting that justice when they need to get the justice. So where lies the alternative dispute resolution? Okay, so I would say that when it comes to criminal practice, the term is restorative justice, basically. And it means, not just... Now, you're not looking at the crime just from the point of we need to punish the offender, but you're also looking at it from even the victim. So restorative justice is like a criminal way of saying alternative dispute resolution or mediation, something like that. And so they have to come together. The victim gets compensated for what has been taken away from them, while the offender also gets, just some sort of resolution between them. And that has been even across the world, that has been the emphasis that, we need to move away from the punitive approach of criminal justice to start exploring restorative justice. Because now, when you say that little offenses, maybe offenses of, I slap you, you slap me, they could definitely be resolved under restorative justice.
Okay. So that's one option, and you've also spoken about the juveniles, and it's also good you mentioned that it's not an across-board thing, because, when you talk about offenses like felony, murder, defilement, rape, and all of that. Yes, there may be a place for you to apologize to the victim or the survivor, but it's still a crime against the state in essence. But there is a problem on ground, talking about, and it's a final question, I'll try to make this short. So what do you suggest in terms of expediting our trials? We have majority inmates of inmates in correctional centers who are awaiting trial. They've not even been found guilty or otherwise. How do we expedite trials for these individuals and every other person?
I would start by saying, even before you can talk about, because when it comes to expediting trial, well, the court has a major role to play. The court has control over its diary, over its dates and all of that.
Does
the only thing, it does. The court definitely. You can't dictate a date to the court, right? But then,
the courts
as a prosecutor,
are swamped. The judges are
definitely they're overwhelmed.
Down, absolutely.
Yes, they're overwhelmed. But everyone, like I said, the prosecutor has a right to ensure that their witnesses, are in court. But even before we look at even expediting, can we even start talking about having plea bargaining even at the magistrate? Why does it have to wait up until it's now at the High Court? By the time a defendant knows that, okay, right here when I'm here at the magistrate court, I can plead guilty and start serving my year sentence, we wouldn't have high numbers of people who are awaiting trial. They can as well start, serving their jail terms even from the first year of committing a crime. And before you know what's happening, they're out of the system. So everyone, like I said, has a role to play when it comes to having a working justice system.
All right. It's a fine place, even though we're tempted to prolong this. But this is...
We will have looked at the issue of evidence and
there's so many issues. The issue of plea bargain that you also mentioned is equally very, very topical. We're having people, but let's not even go there yet. Joke Aladesomi, we thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
And we indeed look forward to engaging you further on these issues. You're watching